Welcome in to Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I am Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. As always, joined by Fashion Baron Chris Biderman. And we've got some 49ers offseason news to get into. But before we do that, quick shout out to our friends at Lamb Chops. If you're watching on the video, you can see Chris's sick-ass Lamb Chops hoodie. It's the black on black. With the black hoodie with the black Lamb Chop script. It is extremely fire. And Chris, I'm sure very comfortable and high quality as well.
Extremely. It's my new favorite hoodie along with the ash gray one, which is my initial favorite hoodie. They're basically the same thing. I liked and wore the ash gray one so much that, as you guys know, I've had to get another one. It seems like hoodie season, at least here in Sacramento, is hanging on for a little bit longer than it might usually.
Yeah, I'm here
which
for
is of great benefit to me and my wardrobe because I get to wear this awesome Lamb Chops hoodie and all the other Lamb Chops gear that keeps us nice and warm. So shout out to our homies at Lamb Chops.
We love Lamb Chops, and we know you will too. Go to sglambchops.com. Use promo code Candlestick20 for 20% off your order today. That is sglambchops.com. Promo code Candlestick20. Get 20% off your order. Also, join the herd. Follow them on Instagram at sglambchops. We also want to shout out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is back, and so are we. And daily fantasy sports does not end with football season, folks. You can get on Prize Picks. It is daily fantasy. You pick more or less. You get 2 to 6 players. You pick more or less on their stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. Or if in Chris's case, you watch the losses pile up. It's fine. But now we're going to get a chance to get it all back, Chris. We're going to get a chance to do that with Prize Picks, and I'm fired up for you for basketball season and to get dialed in with Prize Picks with basketball and baseball because daily fantasy never stops.
Gonna do a lot of more thans on Domantas Sabonis moving forward.
Smart.
We know the Kings aren't exactly the Detroit Pistons of the 1980s when it comes to defense and physicality, which means they're gonna have to score lots of points, which means lots of points and assists and rebounds for our guy Domas.
It's a great point by you.
Yeah, shout out to Prize Picks. We'll be on there regularly throughout basketball season and definitely football season when that starts up again. I'm feeling good about next year. And
me too.
Mostly because it can't be as bad as last year was.
You're so due.
I'm due.
Right.
It's easy logic. That's right. Not a fallacy at all.
PrizePicks.com/candlestick, promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That is PrizePicks.com/candlestick, promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That is Prize Picks. It is my favorite way to consume sports. I am so excited for our partnership with them, and I think that you'll enjoy doing that as well. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's talk 49ers. Hey, so we're recording this Monday afternoon, and the legal tampering window has been open for about 8.5 hours. It just clocked out of work for the day. But before we get to the things that did and didn't happen for the 49ers on the first day of the legal negotiating window, Arik Armstead, it was reported Sunday night, got approached about a pay cut, and he chose to be released instead. That was first reported by Jordan Schultz of Bleacher Report. Matt Mayoko then had the report that Armstead had been approached about a pay cut. But then weirdly, the 49ers on Monday, again according to Mayoko, didn't submit any transactions to the league, which leaves a question of what happened to the Armstead thing. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe that report of Armstead's impending release might have been a bit premature.
Yeah, so we see this, I think, time and again. I think it's pretty rare, but occasionally you see something like, this player's released, and then a week later, everyone changed their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes things can come out, and they come out with for good reason, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's basically a sign that's being made that says, hey, our guy's available, give us a call.
Sure.
you
Sure.
know and then the market will respond, and maybe the asking price of a certain player won't be there, and then the player says, okay, fine, I will go to my initial team and discuss a pay cut and a reworked contract. That does happen now and
Mm-hmm.
again. I don't know what's happening in this case. I would think that given the 49ers relationship with Arik Armstead, that these two sides, I do think there's an element of the 49ers wanting to do right by Armstead.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's more money out there for him, I'm sure they would allow him to explore those opportunities. And it benefits the 49ers from the standpoint of, yeah, I mean, we can clear 17 million in cap space if you sign with another team and we give you a post June 1 designation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Armstead's initial cap number this year, $28 million, which is a lot for a guy who's going to be coming off surgery, who's missed
Mm-hmm.
significant time in each of the last two seasons now, who isn't, he's a good player, obviously, and obviously means a lot intangibly in the locker room from a leadership perspective. I think the three straight, he's been the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for 3 straight years, does a ton in the Sacramento community. Obviously, I've written about that for the B
Mm-hmm.
at various points. And just like a very respected veteran, but at the same time, you look at defensive linemen who make $28 million a year. I don't know that you could put Arik Armstead in that tier at this point in his career, right?
You don't put him up there with Chris Jones and Aaron Donald?
No.
Okay.
And maybe I would if he wasn't dealing with injuries, right? Like,
No, sure.
he's a good
Sure.
player, and he's been at his best in the postseason, which I think is a testament to him for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But, in terms of like, is this a good contract to be moving forward with? The answer is clearly no, right? I think the 49ers understand that. And I think Armstead realistically understands that too. That
Mm-hmm.
being said, I don't know that there's going to be a market for Arik Armstead that's going to pay him, anything close to what he might be trying to make
Sure.
with a new team. And it might be that he tests the open market and teams say, well, your best years are probably behind you, particularly given that you're going to have knee surgery now.
Mm-hmm.
And, here's what we'd offer you. And he'd say, well, I can make that with the Niners in a situation that I'm comfortable with, that's close to home. And then ultimately he decides to come back. And instead of, 1 year remaining on his contract, they convert it to a 2-year deal that basically guarantees the same amount of money or a similar amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes back and ends up getting on the 10-year wall. Like, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to happen. But you look at the deal the Seahawks just agreed to with Leonard Williams. It's 3
Mm-hmm.
years averaging $21.5 million per Ian Rappaport.
Mm-hmm.
Armstead's not getting that deal.
No.
And he's probably not as good as Leonard Williams right now.
No.
So
I don't know.
So, I think the market will play itself out. And, this is not meant in any way to, criticize Armstead or anything. He's got to make the best decision he can for himself and his family,
1,000%.
obviously. He's got a ton of charitable stuff going on, which has required a lot of his time and money.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense for him to try to maximize his earning potential over these final few years of his deal.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't know that there's going to be a huge market for Arik Armstead at $15-20 million a year going forward. So It might be that the reason why there was no transaction on Monday after he was reportedly set to get released on Sunday night, that, maybe he's able to take his camp is able to take some time negotiating with other teams. And then it turns out, all right, fine, I'll come back. We'll restructure this deal and we'll run it back. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know how that works if he can talk contracts with other teams while he's still under contract with the 49ers. I'm not.
I think you can be given permission by your team.
I see. Yeah, so even let's just take his base salary, right? It's 17.4 this year. The defensive tackle contracts that average 17 million ish. It's Ed Oliver, Draymond Jones, Kenny Clark, Vita Vea, Jonathan Allen. Like, he's just not that caliber of player anymore. And then you go down and you look at like Dalvin Tomlinson with the Browns, really excellent player, making 14 and a quarter. This is again AAV, average annual value. DJ Reader, 13 and a quarter. Like that, I can't imagine that the pay cut the Niners want him to take is going to put him at $8 million a year or something crazy like that. So I'm guessing that it wouldn't shock me if the Niners have a number in mind, and that whether it's 13 a year or 14 or whatever it is, I can't imagine that's going to be out there. And I don't think this is a situation where Armstead wants to leave. I think it's just a matter of if somebody comes to you, Chris, or listener, and says, hey, you've done a great job here at your job. We're going to give you a pay cut, but unless you can find a different job elsewhere. So go search for that job. You can still work here. Go search for that job. And if you find a higher paying job, then we'll let you go take it. Like you're going to go try and find that higher paying job every single time.
Yeah. And
it's just the right thing to do.
I know for a fact Armstead wants to be on the 10-year wall, right?
Yeah, that's a big dude. That's a big deal.
The Niners haven't had like Joe Staley's kind of the last one, and I don't even know who would be before that, right? Patrick Willis never made it to the 10-year wall.
Yeah, remember he mentioned that on this very podcast.
Yeah,
how that was like a goal of his was to get on the 10-year wall, but he just couldn't because of his feet. Frank Gore got on there.
Frank Gore got
Joe
10? Staley. Bryant Young.
Jimmy Ward came up short.
Jimmy Ward. Yeah.
Bryant Young for sure.
It's not a long list.
No, and it's hard, dude. I bet the list of players who have been with their team, their current team for 10 plus years is probably super short. Like it's really hard to stick with an NFL team for 10 years. It's hard to be in the league for 10 years, period.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's like Frank Gore, Joe Staley,
Kyle Nelson,
Steve Young,
obviously.
Brent Jones.
I'm trying to go through.
Decent little quarterback.
Decent little player. Fred Warner has a shot. Fred Warner has a real shot. Nick Bosa, we'll see. I'm just trying to go down their current roster, and it's just really hard to find players who are going to be in San Francisco for 10 years.
Yeah, totally. So, we'll see about all that stuff. If the 49ers do end up moving on from Armstead, it will likely be, I would imagine, a post June 1 release, which means it would clear up almost 18 million in cap space. Which, was not insignificant and would give them some freedom to be aggressive in free agency or have a little bit more flexibility when it came to Brandon Ayuk's new contract, which is, I think that's going to get done at some point this offseason. It might not happen till late July or, August to start a training camp, but I am of the mind that Brandon Ayuk is going to be around and that they're going to get that contract done, particularly if they do have some of this cap space that they can work with.
Yeah.
While also shrinking his number from 2024 to, shrinking his cap number in 2024 from 14 on that 5th-year option to, probably 5 or 6 on a new extension too.
Yeah, there's just too much. The more I've thought about this, and you and I have talked about this on this podcast, it seems like a lot of the maneuvers they're making and a lot of what they're eyeing this offseason is next offseason when they might have to pay Brock Purdy upwards of $50 million. And I think if you're going to make that level of commitment, this is what we've said on the podcast before, but if you're going to make that level of commitment to a quarterback and you have a 25-year-old receiver who he has a great rapport with, 26, that he has a great rapport with already, and that receiver is already ascending in an offense where volume is very low for him, why would you not keep that player as a building block around your new quarterback?
We
Your
have
franchise quarterback.
we have
We
a
got
little bit
breaking
of
news?
breaking news here.
Oh, drop it on me. Pause.
From Ian Rappaport at Rapsheet on X, formerly Twitter. More edge help, :
Oh,
the hashtag 49ers are signing hashtag Panthers free agent defensive end. And I'm apologizing in advance regarding the pronunciation of this man's name. Yetur Gross-Matos to a 2-year deal worth $18 million.
yeah, Penn
Source
State
said.
legend, former first-round pick.
Yeah, and a super athletic.
Oh no, I'm sorry,
guy.
second round pick, 38th overall. Are you are you just neck deep in the spider graph right now?
No, but I can be. We're doing a little bit of on the fly podcasting here.
Yeah, we got this is great.
It
I'm
is
checking to see if I
not-
have any old takes about let me get the correct pronunciation here.
All right, we have the spider graph up 6'5", 266, long athlete, 34 7/8 inch arms, 92nd percentile. When looking at the broad jump, 86th percentile, 120 inches. You don't love the bench press numbers, 20 reps, 15th percentile, not ideal, but when you have longer arms, it is a little bit more difficult to get those reps up. So yeah, twitchy athlete.
Yeah, you love it.
Would be my-
Yetur Gross-Matos.
Yetur, okay.
Yetur, yeah. I went to go see if I had any draft takes about Yetur Gross-Matos, and apparently I watched a Penn State game on November 23rd and said, based on what I've seen today, Yetur Gross-Matos is the second best defensive lineman in college football. So that's where that's at.
He just turned 26. Rookie year 2020, 2.5 sacks, 3.5 sacks, 2.5 sacks, and 4.5 sacks.
This dovetails nicely into the Leonard Floyd conversation, though.
Yes.
Who the 49ers signed to a 2-year deal worth up to $24 million, but that sounds like it's with incentives. It's more likely in the $20 million range. He gets $12 million guaranteed this year. And I put on our rundown here, this can't be it. They can't just roll with Leonard Floyd at the spot opposite Nick Bosa and call it good. And I think that Gross-Matos is a perfect addition, because he's listed at 6'5", 265, which means there's probably some inside-outside versatility there, a la Charles Omenihu. And you just mentioned all the measurables. Like, if you're going to bet on a rotational edge player, why not get one with a ton of upside? He's still just 26. He's been in a tough situation in Carolina. Maybe getting in with Chris Kosuric and this 49ers defensive line, maybe you squeeze some more of that untapped talent out of him, like they have with some of the other edge rushers we've seen them bring in.
Yeah, and look, like basically their entire second string defensive line is unrestricted free agent or headed to unrestricted free agency right now. Right, including Cleveland Ferrell and Chase Young. So it looks like, at least on the surface, the 49ers are replacing those guys with Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos. And I'm going to figure out the pronunciation before our next podcast. That's going to be a goal of mine before we get back here. But I don't know how I feel about it just yet. I think Cleveland Ferrell was a good player. Obviously, he had the knee injury late in the season and couldn't be with the team in the playoffs. And Chase Young, this kind of would signal to me that Chase Young is gone, right?
Yeah, probably. It was probably. I think Gross-Matos fills the athletic upside defensive end role that Chase Young probably would have filled.
Yeah. But with Leonard Floyd, I think the thing that really stood out to me, he'd always kind of felt like somebody who was on the 49ers radar, right? Just kind of like a 49ers adjacent player. whether it was stylistically or the teams that he was on, right? Like being on the Rams for a while, playing in Chicago when Vic Fangio was a defensive coordinator. And now it makes sense given that Brandon Staley, his former position coach, is now a defensive coach with the 49ers. Obviously, Nick Sorensen's the DC, but Staley's an associate head coach. And we still don't really know what the dynamic is going to look like. But I think Leonard Floyd, I mean, you look at it, he hasn't missed a game since 2017.
Yeah.
So he's played in every single game in the last 6 seasons, including the playoffs. He's been in a Super Bowl, won it with the Rams in 2021, had a couple of sacks in those playoffs, including one in the Super Bowl against the Bengals. And I think he played 85% of the snaps in that game. But just, you read about him, obviously, over the last 4 years, he's had 39 and a half sacks. So he's almost at 10 sacks a year in the last 4, hasn't missed any time. And he's without doing the deep film dive just yet, he seems like a guy who can be on the field and running downs too.
Yeah,
he's not a pass rushing specialist. He's an every down player, which I think is important because the 49ers have had, they've had some issues. I mean, I thought Samson Ebukam was a really good edge setter. That was probably one of the more underrated parts about his game. Same with Charles Omenihu a couple years ago.
Yep.
I thought the 49ers lost that a little bit. And it was, Chase Young didn't really prove to be a great edge setter. I think when he's fully engaged, he's a decent enough pass rusher, but the 49ers needed more of a every down type presence on the edge.
No doubt.
And I thought Cleveland Ferrell did a good job before he got hurt too, just in terms of like being a quality, not like somebody who's you're going to count on for 12 sacks a year.
Sure.
But I thought Ferrell did well in his role as sort of a rotational player and who can defend the run pretty well.
Yeah.
And so, with Chase Young likely out the door now, bringing in Floyd and Ferrell potentially out the door now too, and bringing in Gross Matos, I think it makes sense. We'll see if it works out. The 49ers love to make investments along their defensive line. And, the other thing here too, what happens with Drake Jackson? Like, is Drake Jackson,
sure,
is he in the picture? Is he going to make the team? Is the new defensive staff, or at least the new leaders of the defense, are they going to count on him? And are the Niners going to be willing to put up with whatever developmental time it'll take? Obviously was injured throughout 2023. It's a big question mark. It would seem adding 2 guys at these numbers specifically would indicate they don't have a ton of faith in Drake Jackson being part of the mix.
Yeah, man. I think regardless of how the rest of free agency and the draft go, I if they can get Cleveland Ferrell back on a cheap deal again, I think that rounds out your edge rush your defensive ends, not necessarily your edge rush, but just kind of your edge depth really nicely. You can add another player in the draft. You have Robert Beal, who's a project second-year player. I just don't know where Drake Jackson winds up fitting. And maybe he has a great camp. Maybe he comes back and he's just awesome and he takes this huge leap because you see all the tools, right? Like it's all there. And he hasn't really gotten a chance to stick at one position for multiple years. He hasn't gotten a chance to have the same body type for multiple years. He got hurt this season, but I mean, all the tools are there. The athleticism's there. So maybe a full off season to train, or a full training camp to work his way into the rotation. Maybe he surprises, but it feels like if they bring in another defensive end, whether through free agency or in the draft, especially if it's a day 1 or 2 pick, it feels like he's kind of the odd man out. But
yeah, so Matt Mayoko, friend of the pod, reported that Drake Jackson underwent, it was initially called a knee injury. Jackson underwent quadriceps surgery, which if it's what you remember what Weston Richburg went through when he basically had to reattach the tendon, the tendon that connected his quad to his knee. That was a really, really tough surgery. And I think that ultimately cost him his career. When he decided to retire earlier than expected. You know, I don't want to speculate about Drake Jackson's injury or his prognosis, but if it was tabbed a knee injury and he ended up requiring quadriceps surgery, you know, the fear would be, at least from where I sit, that it was a pretty substantial injury, and you know, who knows if he's going to be able to recover, to contribute this year, which makes sense given that the 49ers just brought in two $10 million a year type edge rushers.
Yeah. I like the Leonard Floyd signing. I think that it's kind of interesting. He started all 17 games for the Bills last year, and this gets to the depth thing, but he only played like 54% of the snaps. So I think that's where ideally you'd have I'm like 3-down player opposite Nick Bosa, where you have Leonard Floyd as a rotational edge, and same thing with Gross Matos, and same thing with whether it's Furl or Drake Jackson or Robert Beal or whoever. It just doesn't. I think the group is better. They got better at defensive end today, but I still feel like this is a group primed to be sitting there in week 8, and we're going, man, they need more. If they roll in with just this group, I think they're not done there yet. It's just too important of a spot.
We'll see. I think, I think adding 2 of these guys and having multiple bodies, particularly if you think that you can develop Gross Matos into a more productive player than he's been in his career to this point, I think that makes sense. Probably, to get 2 bodies for, say, average $20 million makes more sense to me than like the Brian Burns thing never made any sense to me. Right. That never seemed like a road that the Niners were going to go down. The Danielle Hunter thing, I think made sense, but I think we're going to look at him getting $25-30 million a year. And it just, as much as he would fit and you could potentially make the money work in a scenario like that, I just don't really see the logic in having 2 $30 million a year defensive ends when you do have to pay Brandon Ayuk, when you are going to have to pay a quarterback at some point.
That's just it. Is if it was Nick Bosa and they had no other big contracts, then okay, if you're trying to build out a defense, then that's great. Like in theory, you pair Brian Burns and Nick Bosa, you're going to have a really, really easy time affecting quarterbacks. But like you said, when you're piling on Fred Warner and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and eventually Brock Purdy, it just never really made sense.
Yeah, and the Burns thing too, like, it's one thing to sign Danielle Hunter and give him a contract, $25-30 million a year, right? Because you're not giving up draft capital.
Right.
To get Brian Burns would have required both draft capital and a new contract. And the 49ers just aren't in a position to do that. I mean, they could have if they really wanted to, but I think it would have prevented them from having the flexibility they would need going forward. And also, the only times the 49ers have really done a trade and then trade for somebody and then sign them to a big contract. It's happened twice in my memory with, obviously Jimmy Garoppolo, 2017. They got him, played 5 games, then they signed him to the massive contract. And with D Ford, who was tagged and traded by Kansas City, and as good as D Ford was when he was on the field, the 49ers have been paying dead money on that contract for the last few years, while obviously he's been retired. And I think in the aggregate, you could say that probably wasn't great. Like, you definitely see the logic behind it, but you could say it didn't really work out. And coming off the Trey Lance trade, when the 49ers invested 3 first-round picks in a guy who is now the 3rd stringer for the Dallas Cowboys, they weren't in a position to be dealing away draft capital and giving a massive contract to somebody like Brian Burns. That just never tried to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So now he's going to the New York Giants, obviously, and signed a $30 million a year contract. And it was funny because apparently the Rams offered 2 first-round picks to Carolina for Brian Burns. Was it last year?
Last year.
2 years
Yeah,
ago?
last year.
And they decided not to take that deal, and he went today for a second and a fifth.
Well, when you're as competitive as the Panthers were over the last couple of years, it makes sense that you didn't want to deal Brian Burns. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't want to. This is not a Panthers podcast. I don't want to go deep on this, but it just doesn't. If you're going to do that, that's fine. But then you're committing to extending him. You're committing to pay whatever he demands, and that's a foundational building block for your defense. And now they've just let him go for dog shit draft capital. It just doesn't make sense to me at all.
It's almost like David Tepper is not the best agent or best owner in the NFL.
Dude, you might be onto something.
Almost. Someone should look into that.
Jauan Jennings, it was announced today by the 49ers that they have tendered a 1-year contract to him. It was a second round restricted free agent tender, which means that that Jennings can go out and search the open market and if he, sorry, I'm trying to get the free agent tenders. There it is. Tag and tender projections. There we go. It's a second round tender. So if Jennings goes and signs an offer sheet with another team and the 49ers opt not to match it, the team that signed him to the offer sheet owes the 49ers a second round pick. The second round restricted free agent tender is $4.89 million. So if Jennings plays on that 1-year tender, he would cost $4.89 million fully guaranteed this year. Then he'd be unrestricted next year. But he and the 49ers can still work toward a long-term contract extension. My guess is an extension gets done. What say you?
Yeah, it's tough because if you're the 49ers, you would definitely love to get Jauan Jennings for what, $15 million over 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Say $20 million over 3 years, right?
20 over 3 sounds right.
Yeah.
Sure.
But if you're Jennings, you say, all right, well, I'm basically your insurance policy, and I become way more valuable if and when you decide to trade Deebo Samuel after next offseason to where I jump from a number 3 receiver to a number 2 receiver. And if I'm your number 2 receiver, I want to be making way more than $5, $6, $7 million a year. Right?
It's a good point.
So, I think Jennings for sure is coming back this season. Like there's no doubt in my mind about that.
I'd be shocked if a team was willing to give up a second round pick to acquire Jauan Jennings
in a year where the draft is loaded with receivers.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So Jauan Jennings is coming back for sure. The bigger question is, I'm going to say that I don't think they do come to an agreement on a long-term deal. And I think it will allow Jennings to continue to build on his value and potentially test unrestricted free agency. You remember, like, NFL players, their whole thing, not their whole thing, like they want to win, obviously. But like a career goal for the vast majority of NFL players is to be productive and then hit unrestricted free agency. That's like, you talk to guys, that's like that is their earning power. Like they will never sign a bigger contract than the first time they hit unrestricted free agency in the prime of their careers. So while it absolutely makes sense for the 49ers to try to get a deal done with Jennings, what I think is probably likely is that, and that's redundant, probably likely. What I think is likely is that Jennings would look at it and say, why would I want to tie myself down to a 3-year, $18 million contract for you guys, which works for you guys as a number 3 receiver, when it could be that I'm the number 2 receiver next year and I would be worth maybe double that. So why, I'll play out this season, be productive again. And, I was your leading receiver in the Super Bowl and I was a super important player in the Super Bowl. And then I could hit unrestricted free agency and potentially be somebody's number 2 receiver next year if you guys don't want to pay me as a number 2. So I don't think the Niners and Jennings are gonna. I mean, I'm not ruling it out. I would just say I think what makes sense for the 49ers is to offer him 3rd receiver money, while Jennings could be productive enough to warrant number 2 receiver money if he hits unrestricted free agency next year.
If you're the 49ers, are you giving him 3 and 24? with
Yeah.
14 guaranteed. Yeah? That's what
Yeah.
Zay Jones got from the Jags. And then you have Adam Thielen making 8.3, Russell Gage 8.5, Juju Smith-Schuster 8.5. Robert Woods got 7.6 from the Texans. Like, I think that's a deal the 49ers could be really comfortable with. And I think if you're Jauan Jennings, you'd be really comfortable at that spot as well. Because you said, I mean, you mentioned a really productive year. He had 19 catches for 265 yards and a touchdown. And teams aren't going to pay a good blocking receiver who averages 320 yards and a couple of touchdowns a year, $15 million. And I don't foresee a scenario where Jennings is coming out and having this breakout year where he has 900 yards and 6 touchdowns and gets this huge payday in free agency. I think the risk reward of not signing now, let's call it 3-24, if that's what the Niners offer. I don't know that, but let's just for sake of argument here. If they offer him 3-24, the risk reward of no, I'm going to bet on myself and try and make more than 8 is like you're just as likely to get hurt and diminish your value, so I don't.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I absolutely think the 49ers would I think the 49ers would offer him that type of contract.
Sure.
There's no doubt that the 49ers would love to sign him to that type of deal because it would be of good value.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying if you're Jennings and you look at the cap exploding throughout the league and you look at Kyle Shanahan assistants running offenses all throughout the league, despite whatever his numbers might be, it wouldn't be a super difficult sell for, say, Kubiak running the Saints offense in New Orleans. Bobby Slowick, somebody like that, saying, we love this guy. Maybe we give him 10 or 12 million a year. I know it sounds like a lot, but the cap's gone up $50 million the last 2 years, right?
Sure.
So a lot of these deals are going to just get bigger. Like it's the cap going up is basically inflation, right? It's not that more guys are going to get paid necessarily. It's just that these bigger contracts are just going to get bigger and bigger.
Sure.
So I could
Gabe
see
Davis
a world.
Gabe Davis just got 13 a year from the Jags.
Yeah.
And his 4 years, he's gone 7 touchdowns, 6, 7, and 7, and he's been up near or above 600 yards every single season.
Yeah. Like that's all I'm saying. Like if I'm Jawan's representation, I'm like, I would certainly look at a contract with the 49ers and ultimately it would be up to Jennings to be like, do you want to take an $18 million contract now, or do you want to see if you can get 30 next offseason?
Sure.
Right? Like not 30 a year, but like 30 in guarantees or something.
Sure.
Right? Like who knows? Deebo Samuel fractures his shoulder. Jennings starts 13 games, 7 touchdowns, 600 yards, blocks his face off, has another big playoff moment.
Sure.
Right? Like that's a guy who could do work on the free agent market. That's all I'm saying.
No, that's a good point. Gosh, I forgot that Deebo Samuel is the 7th highest paid wide receiver. Oof.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Couple of lesser things that happened on Monday. Brandon Allen is back at quarterback. That can't be at QB, right? There's just no way they go into Brandon Allen as QB2.
Well, I could see them drafting somebody. Not early.
Yeah, that's what's the earliest, because I'm with you. Maybe they really love Brandon Allen and they think he is QB2 and the whole quarterback injury thing is now a thing of the past and they're super confident that they can just do a normal backup situation where the backup just doesn't really play. I'm with you on drafting a quarterback. What's the earliest that they could draft a quarterback for you?
I wouldn't draft a quarterback earlier than day 3. So I guess, I haven't looked at the draft class all that closely just yet, but like if it's a day 3 pick, even if it's a 4th rounder, like if you like a guy, take him.
Sure.
Like there have been plenty of quarterbacks drafted in the 4th round who end up being career backups. And maybe that's somebody that, CJ Beathard, for example, right?
Yeah. 3rd round pick.
Compensatory 3rd round pick, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Semantics.
No, I was more agreeing with you than anything.
I like if it was a 4th-round pick in day 3, I think I would be fine with it. Like Kyle Shanahan and Brian Greasy love a dude. I'm not going to tell them that they can't draft him just because you have Brock Purdy. I don't think, I think everybody with the 49ers is mature enough to be like, yeah, we drafted a guy earlier than we drafted Brock Purdy, but Brock's clearly our guy. Like this isn't gonna be a thing.
In fairness, everybody they draft is drafted earlier than Brock Purdy, so
right, for sure. But I know there's this idea that well, you can't draft anybody earlier than the 7th round because it would undermine Brock Purdy. It's it's silly. We're all kind of beyond that at this point.
I
wouldn't use a pick on one of the first 2 days of the draft, but if they found someone they liked in the 4th round, I'd be fine with it.
I think if they went late 3rd round pick with it, if it was a quarterback that they were just super high on, then I don't think I would hate it. But yeah, day 3 feels right. Just a developmental quarterback. He can be QB3 or I would, maybe be QB3 unless he does a Brock Purdy and wins the QB2 job.
I mean, if you could have ideally, Brandon Allen signed a 1-year deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think in an ideal world, you could have a capable backup quarterback on a rookie contract.
Yeah.
Rather than, paying Sam Darnold $5 million, right? Rather than pay Sam Darnold Robbie Gold money to be your backup quarterback.
Yeah. Right.
I think that would be the ideal world. So if you are drafting a quarterback in the 4th or 5th round, you're drafting him hoping he could develop into your backup. So next year you don't have to pay a backup.
Right. Yeah. And then you keep your QB room as cheap as possible, even after paying Brock.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And if things go sideways with Brock Purdy, you have a draft pick that you like in the building already.
Yeah.
In the disaster event. Charlie Warner, no longer a 49er. Chris, your thoughts?
I think the Super Bowl hangover thing is a real thing. We saw how, the 2020 season after the 49ers went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs was just a complete disaster. You're going to look back, if 2024 is a complete disaster, you're going to look at Charlie Warner leaving as the first domino.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's going to be, that was ominous. This is, how are we possibly going to replace his blocking, his special teams prowess, his presence in the locker room?
Yeah, and I think the underrated thing here, or the thing that hasn't gotten bandied about quite enough, is that the Falcons went and they go make the big swing at quarterback, right? They go get Kirk Cousins. And it's pretty clear that Cousins immediately started, swinging his newfound power around and said, "Get me some weapons." And the Falcons said, "We've got just the guy."
Well,
we know who we were targeting. But 3 years, $12 million. Good for Charlie Warner, dude.
Oh, yeah. But if I can continue with a bit here.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Speaking of weapons, you remember how when George Kittle came on the pod and we asked him, we're doing some really serious journalism, and we asked him which teammate he would want to survive a zombie apocalypse with. Yeah. He said Charlie Warner.
He did.
So I don't know exactly what he was alluding to, but I thought that was an appropriate segue when you mentioned, Kirk Cousins wanting weapons.
Maybe like a personal bodyguard kind of
deal. Yeah. Somebody not afraid to use the tools at his disposal.
Charlie Warner, of course, a Georgia native, so he's familiar with the landscape in case things go haywire.
Went to the University of Georgia.
He did.
Unfortunately, I remember it being mentioned that when the 49ers drafted Charlie Warner, he was a 6th round pick?
Yes.
That this would be a Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez type duo.
Oh, yeah, a little duo. Yeah. Combination of those two.
Didn't quite work out that way.
It's a shame that the 49ers didn't win the Super Bowl despite on their roster having a cross between Drew Brees and Lamar Jackson and Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. It's kind of nuts.
Someone's got to hold them accountable.
Feet fire now. No, good for Charlie Warner though, man. I was
Yeah.
so sure that when I was going through free agency stuff at Niners Wire, it's like, dude, Charlie Warner's back. He's back on like 2 years and 6 million and 3.5 guaranteed or whatever, and this is just his lot in life to be George Kittle's backup and slash third tight end if the Niners find a better one. And no, he gets $4 million a year from his hometown team, and gets to join an up and coming Falcons club. Good for him. Shout out to Charlie Warner.
He played a lot. Like,
did.
for a guy who never caught the ball, he played a lot.
For a guy who never played, he played a lot.
No,
Dude, he had 11. He had 11 catches for 120 yards in 4 years. George Kittle has like multiple games where he has more production than that.
Yeah, I mean, and he played 20% of the snaps in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, 29% I think for the year. No, it's a key piece, and this opens just another. I mean, this is just a whole other conversation. I was pretty deep in the weeds, but I figure most people listening to a 49ers podcast in March are probably cool to go down here. Ross Dwelly also a free agent, which means the 49ers have George Kittle. They have Cameron Latu, who spent a third-round pick last year, spent the entire season on IR, and Braden Willis, a seventh-round pick from last year, who played very sparingly on offense. So I imagine the Niners are going to go get another veteran tight end. I think Will Dissly got released by the Seahawks. Good blocking tight end, a little bit of a receiving threat, certainly more than Charlie Warner was.
I believe he signed somewhere. Let me.
Oh, did he? Oh, you know what? I think he did. I think
Chargers.
You're right. Yes.
Yes, he signed with the Chargers.
No, you're right.
Today. 3-year deal.
That's no, I knew that. Just that type of player is what I meant.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I imagine they'll go get some kind of veteran tight end and see what they've got with their two young guys. But that's going to be something that, if you're deep in the weeds on the Niners, their backup tight end situation is rough right now.
So, switching gears a little bit,
please,
you got to spin it forward to the draft.
Nice job.
Given the 49ers have added two edge rushers today, likely meaning the end of Cleveland Ferrell and Chase Young.
Maybe.
With San Francisco. I think likely is fair. Do you think this changes what they do early in the draft?
No. Early in the draft, like first 2 days?
Yeah.
Nah. Because this is Leonard Floyd is on a 2-year deal and he's 31 or 32.
31.
Gross Matos hasn't done enough as an NFL player to warrant like, oh yeah, hey, here's a guy we can bank on for the next 2 years. I think that if you're going to really invest at defensive end, you need to actually do it. Unless they're super high on Robert Beal or are super bullish on Drake Jackson still. But I've been of the mind now, according to people smarter than me who follow the draft closer than I do, it's not a great edge class. But if you find a high upside player you like on day 2, then I think you go for it. If not, then you'd get a Robert Beal type later in the draft and see if you can mold them. But I still think it's offensive line. Probably need some cornerback help. Got to figure out what they're doing at safety.
I think it's defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, if one of the top, I've been doing a lot of offensive line stuff in mock drafts, but if one of Byron Murphy from Texas, I believe his name is Jauan Newton from Illinois, are the two big defensive tackle prospects. If one of those guys falls, then maybe the Niners do it and pull the trigger for value or whatever over positional need. But I still think it's, even with the not Charlie Warner, Colton McKivitz signing a 1-year extension, I still think you have to. It's too important of a position to just go, yeah, maybe it's Colton McKivitz. I think
we haven't talked about McKivitz.
We have not.
It was a 1-year, $7 million extension.
65% fully guaranteed. That's how his agency.
The 49ers gave their starting right tackle guard money.
Although apparently guard money is $20 million a year now. So.
Yeah, I mean that's true too. It raised my eyebrows from the standpoint of there aren't too many. I mean, it seems like to me them paying him guard money was pretty deliberate. Like in
Yeah.
terms of like 31 does feel pretty logical to take a right tackle.
Yeah, no doubt. And based on the prospects I've seen fall to the 49ers at 31, it's a lot of could play guard, could play tackle type of prospects. And so I think you extend Colton McKivitz and absolute, well, best case for him is he holds down the right tackle spot and he makes a leap and the 49ers have a right tackle. But worst case, if you wind up drafting a right tackle who's better than McKivitz and McKivitz doesn't win the right guard job and now he's your backup swing tackle Swiss Army knife offensive lineman, I feel way better about him in that spot than I do as a starting right tackle. So maybe it's just acquiring capable offensive linemen. Like you re-sign John Feliciano, you have Spencer Burford, you have Colton McKivitz, you draft a player in the first round who can play tackle or guard, and then you just kind of let them duke it out and you see who's best at what position.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where they're leaning.
I think so. My feeling is because the 49ers have a bunch of compensatory picks again, right? And they have their picks in rounds 1 through 3. And then they have 3 picks in round 4, a pick in round 5, 2 in round 6, and 2 in round 7. I think the 49ers look at comp picks as sort of extra currency for trades.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would make a lot of sense for them to identify somebody they like, maybe middle of the first round or in the 20s, and then try to jump up and get a tackle that they think could, play right tackle sooner rather than later, and then switch over to replace Trent Williams whenever he retires in the next few years.
Interesting. Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure if that trade is available to them, no doubt.
Yeah.
Would you prioritize that so highly that if, let's say there's a tackle prospect who falls to, we'll just say 22, so they got to jump up 9 spots, and they love him, but that team that they're trading with, whoever it is, I don't know who's picking at that spot, but whoever's picking 22nd says need 31 and your second this year.
Philadelphia is at 22.
So if Philly wants a 1 and your second this year, where you're picking 22nd and then not picking again until the late 3rd round, is that something you're good with?
I might do next year's second. I don't know. I would have to
if it's here's my thought on it. If it's a player that they know, and obviously you don't know, but that they in the future we get to September and it's like, man, that player they traded up for is a monster at right tackle. He's going to start 17 games this year, and they are primed for Trent Williams' retirement. He's going to slide over to that left tackle spot and be there for a decade. Then I think you 100% do whatever realistic thing you can to get up and get that player. Yeah.
And it would be like, at that point, you are betting on the talent, right? Like the physical skill set, but you're betting on the person, the work ethic, all the character stuff, everything that makes a gold helmet Niner or a gold helmet prospect. And that's all of like what I'll always go back, like George Kittle and Fred Warner, like gold helmet type prospects who like, well, we're not sure that, obviously those guys weren't first round picks from a talent perspective, but like you're betting on the human being, their drive, their work ethic, their football character, all of that stuff to develop into somebody that you can rely on. Because being reliable is far more than just being talented. There's a lot of like mental stuff, mental strength, football character, all the, cliche intangible things that make elite so like when the 49ers, if they do identify a prospect like that they trade up, it's like, okay, they love this dude. Right? Like they're not, this is not like a Jauan Kinlaw, like there are a lot of questions, but we like the talent. Like this has got to be
position
like
lead.
Yeah, this has got to be something where like we are convinced that this dude is going to be a team captain for us. and like not only be a productive player, but somebody that we can rely on and be like a leader, like a, that type of dude. Like that's what this prospect has to be. It can't be like, yeah, he wasn't as productive in school, but he's 6'7" and he has 40-inch arms, and man, we just a ball of clay. Like it can't be that guy.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't think.
No doubt. Yeah, you can't afford to. Hey, that draft pick showed up 30 pounds overweight to camp. Now he's not going to play this year because he's got to get in shape to play in Shanahan's offense.
Right.
Nah, that can't fly.
Yeah. Ends up being a guard because he's gained too much weight and can't move.
Hey, can we clap it out one time for Kirk Cousins, by the way, no longer being in our lives? This is big time. We can dead the Kirk Cousins 49ers stuff. This is just a great day for us. I'm really excited.
It's a tradable contract. You're so mad. No, I mean, Kirk Cousins is going to go down as one of just the all-time bag getters in human history.
Oh, he's an icon. An absolute baggage claim icon. And I'm really proud of him for joining the Falcons so we can shut the hell up about Kirk Cousins on the 49ers.
What was it? 5 years, 180?
4 for 180 with 100 guaranteed. For a 36-year-old coming off an Achilles tear.
Jeez.
But they didn't want to fuck around with Lamar Jackson last year. Sure, man.
I mean, maybe they didn't, but they also, like, is Baltimore really going to trade Lamar Jackson in that moment?
Last year?
Yeah. Were they going to trade him?
I mean, maybe that's not the point, though.
Okay.
The point is that the Falcons didn't even feign interest.
Like, no. Oh, right. Yeah, they like released a statement saying they were interested.
That's just not something we want to do right now, and he's too injury prone, and like, okay.
Right.
And he goes and wins an MVP, and they pay 36-year-old Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles tear. Someone get Jonathan out of here, please. I'm not helping.
That was the joke I was making. Jonathan in the YouTube chat says tradable contract 2025 to Niners. Yeah, that was the joke.
The Falcons are going to go. The Falcons are going to go 9-8 and be a first-round exit in the playoffs. And Brock Purdy is going to struggle, and we're going to be sitting here next offseason like, oh well. Do you trade a first for Kirk?
Would you rather give Brock Purdy $50 million a year or trade your third-round pick to alleviate the Falcons of Kirk Cousins?
I would rather pay Brock Purdy 100% of the salary cap than have to deal with like, oh, it's been a long time and been a long time coming. Kirk Cousins finally a 49er. The Niners didn't even look at quarterbacks in the 2017 draft because they were planning to sign Kirk Cousins the next offseason.
Oh, man. NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group.
Thank you.
Used to be all over
buddy.
Kirk Cousins rumors back in 2017.
You rode the Kirk Cousins rumors to so many monthly bonuses. 5 reasons. 5 reasons Kirk Cousins joining the 49ers is a good idea.
And I was not wrong. That was well before all of the, Kyle Shanahan saying publicly that their plan was to sign Kirk Cousins. May or may not have been in tune with what was going on there. Just saying.
Tapped in. Had a babe. You have anything else for us? Russell Wilson's joining the Steelers. That's a notable thing that happened.
What a disaster that's going to be. Holy
Not a cast-off, though.
Holy cow. That is going to be horrendous.
It's so funny that the Steelers are presenting this as a quarterback competition. If
of all the meetings I could be a fly on the wall on this offseason, it's the first one where Russell Wilson sits in Mike Tomlin's office. And the discussion about what the season is going to be like happens. Because in Mike Tomlin's mind, I have a ton of respect for Mike Tomlin. In Mike Tomlin's mind, I'm sure he's looking at it like, yeah, man, you're going to have to earn your starting job. And Russ
I have
is
no
gonna
doubt
be like,
that's what's in his mind for sure.
and I wonder how willing Russ is going to be to listen to that conversation.
Bro, you know what? You know what I'm here for? Kenny Pickett getting the first snap of the ones at training camp. I'm so here for everything that comes with that. Russell Wilson just vibing with the twos for a week. Until it becomes very clear that Kenny Pickett stinks and Russell Wilson, even in this stage of his career, is way better.
I mean, I get the bet. It's like they're paying $1.2 million or whatever to have Russell Wilson be in their quarterback room.
Mm-hmm.
I get the bet. It's of little risk.
No doubt.
I just do not think it's going to work.
I could not agree more with you. I heard somebody the other day breaking it down. Basically, Russell Wilson is the exact same quarterback he was in Seattle. He's just less athletic, so he can't create as much, and he still won't throw it over the middle. Oh, okay. Cool.
And just like the personality of Pittsburgh, the city, and Steelers fans, I just could not see a more diametrically opposite mindset than what Russell Wilson has had throughout his career. And just it's a chef's kiss thing. It's one of those things that happens in sports. You're like, this is going to be a disaster, and I can't wait.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be fun to follow. I can't wait.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all I've got.
Charlie Warner.
See you at the jersey retirement?
Yeah.
All right.
89.
Very good. That number 89. Never be worn again.
Until they draft a tight end in the fourth.
I was going to say, until this UDFA from Northern Kentucky rocks it.
Is that a school?
Yeah, UNK, the Hilltoppers. Come on, man.
Oh, the Hilltoppers. Wow, look at you. Yeah.
Come on. I pick them every year in March Madness, and they never win.
Okay, fair.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. YouTube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles podcast, or you can just search Candlestick Chronicles right there. Please subscribe. Hit the little thumbs up button on the videos you watch. We would appreciate that immensely. Everybody in here right now, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up. Thank you so much for doing so in advance. And if you don't already subscribe to the pod, please do so wherever you get your podcasts. And when you do subscribe, please also rate and review. We're hanging out with you through the whole off season. So if you got friends who are Niner fans who are like, I don't want to go back to football yet, just tell them, hey, you know what? We're not talking X's and O's. We're just getting through the off season one day at a time. It's next football season's coming, no matter what. So we're getting you ready for it. And we appreciate everybody for watching and listening along. We will talk to you next time.
Subscribe, rate, and review, and we will have a full breakdown on which college has a team nicknamed the Hilltoppers in our next episode.
Oh, Western Kentucky, that's right. No, Rob's right. It is Western Kentucky.
You just ruined the tease.
That's my bad. Northern Kentucky is obviously the Norsemen.
Oh, sure.
What an idiot. I'm so dumb. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you guys later this week.